Welcome to Stack Hunters. I'm Bradley Stalder, your host tonight, and drafting along with me, Jeremiah Retzlaff, aka Coach Retzlaff1 on X. Jeremiah is going to help me steer the ship while I'm drafting. It's just we're drafting here in the Deep End Invitational. Shout out to Mike. Shout out to Adam from the Deep End. Grateful to have the opportunity to draft in this tournament, second year in a row that I've been invited, and it was a disaster zone for me last year because I forgot that you had to start 3 wide receivers instead of 2, so I went kind of running back and quarterback heavy, and that backfired. Nevertheless, we're going to get started here in just a few minutes, but Jeremiah, welcome back to Stack Hunters.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bradley, and you love to see it. We're in the thick of it for draft season. By the end of draft season, we should be throwing up from how much we've been drafting. You should almost be sick of it. And these are the days where if we've been drafting since the NFC Championship game to today, if you've been on the clock, if you're a sicko, you've been on the clock since that time, maybe short of a couple days in the draft where there was a break from these tournaments. And just understand, run the race with endurance to the beginning of September. We are right there, and it is time.
It is time. It's almost time for us to be on the clock. We're going to get drafting here in just about 2 minutes. We are recording this, and it'll be posted next week. We're recording this live Thursday, August 15th, 8 p.m. Eastern. So by the time this drops, maybe Brandon Ayuk is traded. Maybe we get a big injury. Who knows? Maybe our team will have imploded. But this is a very interesting tournament because this Deep End tournament is using the RotoViz TriFLEX format, a Superflex with 2 additional flex positions and 3 starting wide receivers. So this is not this is a tough draft room for those who are drafting with the first time. Stacey Perez is in here. Go Bills, who's won the FFPC tournament before, is in here. Death Dealers is in here. There's a lot of sharks in the Deep End Invitational for 2024. Jeremiah and I are going to reveal who our first pick is right after this. So, Jeremiah, this is a Superflex tournament, and even though there's an additional couple flexes, and even though there's an additional wide receiver, we're still going Josh Allen with the number 1 pick here in just a moment. He's my number 1 quarterback in the Superflex tournament. Like, I don't know how you move away from him. The percentage of his fantasy points scored independent of everyone else is just so massive, and so for a player who has been the quarterback 1 over the last couple of years, I'm not really worried about, a flat or receiving core with Kincaid and Coleman and Curtis Samuel. I think Josh Allen is still going to be a mega producer for you for fantasy.
Also, Josh Allen is just going to make the call for himself. He'll have the passing, and the numbers will get there. Where it's flat is more so a problem that you have respective to the receivers. So that's really a Curtis Samuel problem, a Dalton Kincaid problem that has to be solved. But we know a rising tide lifts all boats. Josh Allen is going to float right to the top.
I mean, you love to see it. We're going to select Josh Allen here. It's going to be, that was the slam dunk pick, but the question is what's going to happen going around the turn. And there's a million different ways in which you can win these FFPC tournaments, given that it's tight end premium. It's start 3 wide receivers. There's extra flex positions, super deep, and it's best ball. But Jeremiah, it's only 20 rounds. So we were talking, in the pre-show meeting about how you kind of have to punt one of these positions. And we have this anchor quarterback, but who's going to come back to us at that 2-3 turn is going to be a major question, and I think will set the tone for the rest of the build.
Absolutely, and at a certain point, you want to be out on a position because we're going to leverage in somewhere. you have to be unafraid to have an unbalanced team. It's just a matter of you need to be reactive towards which position are you bailing on and how will you recover later. To your point, if there's 3 wide receivers, we don't necessarily want to put ourselves at a point where we want to bail ourselves out at the receiver position. So it sounds like we're already at least in anchor at quarterback. Receivers there. We have the tight end premium consideration out there, of course, pairing in this FFPC format with Josh Allen would be Dalton Kincaid. I'm leaning personally towards running back being the contingent upside that we can get later in this draft. What do you think of that?
Oh, I love that. I love the contingent upside. I think 0 RB, even with those extra flex positions, is the way to go. And in these FFPC tournaments, we do see running back pushed up a little bit because normally it's only start 2 wide receivers. But now that there's start 3 wide receivers, there's probably going to be a little bit more hunger in terms of, wow, we just saw seven straight quarterbacks go off in the first round, Jeremiah. Wow, that's pretty wild to me. Nevertheless, we have a lot of contingency upside later in the draft. There's some very eyebrow raising, interesting profile if they get larger work running backs that we could be targeting later. So I think the plan is to we might get some really nice tight ends at that 2-3 turn. Maybe Dalton Kincaid is still there. That would be, I know you mentioned him. That would be a nice stacking partner. But there might also be some falling wide receivers given this TriFLEX, format where we just saw 7 quarterbacks go right off the board. Is this the right move? Like, should we have seen 7 straight quarterbacks go off in this format?
Well, I think it's just, even though this is a sharp room, there's the element of Fear Street. And if you take the person at the 108, they go with CD Lamb. They're brave right there because coming back at them, they might get caught behind the quarterback cliff. And I think what happens is it gets contagious in a room. You see a tier start and you don't want to miss out on it. So people went up to A-Rich, Kyler, CJ Stroud, and there's Jaden Daniels. There's somebody who I would definitely put, the person just going at the turn, I would put Jaden Daniels right up there. That person is very sharp as an axe.
Yes.
And they're paying a premium price. But we've been there, Bradley, and now we're seeing it reflected. You had the preseason game. It's almost like things have to happen. If I believe Dan Williamson is in on Jaden Daniels. He's always wanted some of him. So excellent pick by that person. And now he's appropriately priced.
It's about insert your expletive time, Jeremiah. Whatever your favorite expletive is, that's the time that it is to be drafting Jaden Daniels. The pathway for him was always clear to be in that Kyler, Anthony Richardson, Lamar Jackson type of tier. Like the pathway for him. He is, I'm pulling up my exposures right now, my third most exposed quarterback. So it's cool. We like it.
Well, it's funny you see Joe Burrow. I was going to say, I would not go Joe Burrow over Jaden Daniels. That's how much I love Jaden Daniels. But particularly, though, the person from the 11th spot has a plan. They went Joe Burrow and stacked with Jamar Chase. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's a good move. If you're going to, I mean, maybe you go Chase and then, risk it with Burrow coming back. The pathway for Joe Burrow to be, quarterback one's kind of difficult. Mm-hmm. But it's fine. It keeps them competitive. It keeps them there. Like the plan is there. And this is one of those tournaments where it's just points over the course of the season, max points. So this is not a tournament eliminator type of deal where you get to the playoffs and it's just a few teams at the end. This is, a few cohorts of drafts that are competing in one larger tournament. So, it's probably going to be unique that you get Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Sure. You're one of one in a group of 4 teams. Like, that's why I don't think we need to emphasize stacking too much in this, Jeremiah. Like we can, but we don't need to like push ourselves to always be stacking as compared to other tournaments.
So to your point, as we're approaching a few picks out, the low-hanging fruit when you say not feeling keen on stacking, the one area of the Bills where people are keen on stacking, and you have to make that declaration early, is with Dalton Kincaid, sometimes with James Cook in those middle rounds, like 5, 6. How do you feel? Do you feel pressed at all to go Kincaid, or are you willing to let it pass here, to your point?
In the FFPC like normal settings, Dalton Kincaid is my number 15 overall player.
Mm-hmm.
So I like I've come around on him this offseason. I reran the projections, and it was just very hard for me to see him outside of round 2. And look, we can't think that Dalton Kincaid is going to come back to us at the 412 5-1. So it's going to be that move to get Dalton Kincaid at that spot if in fact he does make it back.
So you feel convicted here coming away. We're in this spot with one of our 2 picks. You think we go Kincaid?
I think one of them, yep, we'll go Kincaid, and then the other, like we're looking at some wide receivers here, like Garrett Wilson staring at us in the face. I'm kind of bummed that AJ Brown went off that spot, but that's the right spot for him. And so like Marvin Harrison is there. We're kind of like falling off the cliff in terms of what other options there are. Maybe we go the other quarterback possibility. Yeah, like Garrett Wilson goes off. Dalton Kincaid is there. We'll queue him up.
Yep.
We could go Achane. We could go Marvin Harrison. I think I like the Marvin Harrison pick.
Yeah. Go Harrison, and then if we like that Miami share, we can think towards Jalen Wright later.
Yes.
And understanding you don't want to fall off of the receiver cliff to what you were speaking to.
Yeah, we need that. We need that receiver. We need to hammer that for sure. So we're gonna go Dalton Kincaid. And then we're going to also go Marvin Harrison to get our wide receiver.
Yep. That's excellent. And what's cool about that is you laid out a plan. We talked about it, and it's just laying early. We do see this steep cliff here at the receiver position because what we are juxtaposing across right there was Marvin Harrison with Puka Nacua, who has some of his injury questions that are perking up. And then those receivers, that pocket of Drake London, Chris Olave, it gets flatter than people want to admit. So getting Marvin Harrison there, I think, was huge. And
Heck, we might get Chris Olave all the way back. Like real talk, the ADP right now for Chris Olave is 45. Like it's not outside the range of outcomes that we get a Chris Olave or a Deebo Samuel or a Nico Collins is ADP 49 in this format. So I'm okay with that because as you mentioned, there is a flat tier. There are players that feel like they're just placeholder players. I like to call them that, where they're like, I'm taking him because I have to fill the spot and he's here, so I should just take him. And those are fine here and there, but there's just so many in this range of the draft that I'm staring at the board and nothing is popping out to me. Like Jared Goff is there, Tua is there, Saquon is there. Like we can wait for quarterback a little bit later and take some shots on a later Will Levis, for instance, or
talk
even
dirty to me.
Talk mayo to you?
Yes, all of it. Yep.
You saw the fragrance promo that he did, right?
Oh, it's genius. You need to lean right into it. And it's funny. Thank you for answering. The question that I was going to pose to you was, are you going to feel pressed with essentially what's a 20 gap towards our next quarterback? Since we double tapped non-QB players, where's your pressure point towards getting a quarterback? So I like your mentality where we might be able to
Bryce Young
push.
seems viable.
Yep.
We probably want to wait a while and take like Bryce Young and Bo Nix or something like that. Or,
Yep.
Daniel Jones, who has pathway to be quarterback 5 overall. Like, it's kind of sick to say,
Mhm.
but if everyone is in on Malik Neighbors,
Yes.
you can't have your cake and eat it too, Jeremiah. Like, you either have to be out on Malik Neighbors, and if you're out on Daniel Jones, or you have to be in on Daniel Jones if you're in on Malik Neighbors. That's the reality of, like, Drew Lock isn't going to get it done for that team. So, I mean, he's hurt right now anyways.
Yes.
Tommy DeVito. No. So that's how we're approaching this. And we want to go wide receivers in this spot unless we see some major ADP value.
Now, is there any viability, or do you think this is too small of a tournament to attack a high upside backup quarterback? I'm talking
If you're
later.
taking, like, let's just put him out there. Fields is the one
Yes.
that we're thinking about. I mean, he's in that conversation too. Like, if you get Justin Fields week 17 against the Chiefs, and it's Patrick Mahomes throwing bombs against a depleted secondary that is Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh's trying to win games, and Justin Fields might be the question, which quarterback gives us the best chance to win. Sometimes teams are unintuitive in terms of that, and Justin Fields might be that answer for Mike Tomlin at that time. We'll see. We will see whether that's the case, but I give a 30% chance, 40% chance that he's starting week 17. And isn't that good enough for a quarterback who has shown us quarterback 5 overall in the past and 40
Yes.
point games overall in the past?
Yes. On a given week, top 5 upside any week. And that's the volatility of the NFL. Each week, each season, you have that opportunity, and you're just inputting, just even for a couple games, a big stretch at the end of the season would be huge. Now, where do you think, how viable and how far off the deep end would you go? Let's say it's somebody like you're pivoting between Brissett and Drake May, or even going out as far as Michael Penix Jr. because you're bearish on Kirk Cousins. How far are we swinging? That's too deep.
That's too deep for me.
Yep.
This is a small tournament. There's only, I think, 4 or 5 drafts that are happening that are entering into this. So it's
Okay.
relatively small. I'm not taking that type of shot. In larger field tournaments, yes, you
Yep.
want a sprinkling of Penix, a sprinkling of Brissett, a sprinkling,
Gotcha.
whoever. But at this point, like, no. I'm not looking at going that deep. I do want some starters
Yep.
because that's who's going to be drafted. I don't want to too far galaxy brain this thing.
Okay, good. So we figure out it's not too much of a gal brain, but it sounds like we're going to sandwich. And to your point, we're going to pack in the requisite wide receivers here, and then pick our spots where we nail that second quarterback. But the buoy there, in a good way, is the fact that we have the anchor in Josh Allen.
We do. So here's what's interesting, Jeremiah, is, like, as funny as it sounds, the players, it's kind of like the first 4 rounds are kind of like flip-flopped in like how you're getting access to players, but they're all the same players.
Mhm.
Like, you could definitely get a Josh Allen, Dalton Kincaid, and maybe not maybe Marvin Harrison, maybe. You might be able to get most of these players on the same team. Heck, yes, you should be able to get all these players. You could have gotten them all in the same team in like your regular FFPC league, if you like nuanced it a little bit. So this is, even though it's a different format, good players are still good players, and they're getting driven up. It's where, like, it's hard for you to see picking Tua in the 3rd round to pay off. It's
Yeah.
hard for you to see Jared Goff paying off in the 3rd round. It's hard to see Trevor Lawrence paying off in the 3rd round because their relative value is so much lower than the draft capital that you're putting in right now. So is that surprising to you, seeing some of these like Kirk Cousins going off at the 312, even in a Superflex tournament?
Yeah, and well, what they are looking at, I believe it's the Falcons-Washington matchup that they've tried to lock up, and they're forced and pushing it just a little bit with Kirk Cousins there and Jaden Daniels. And do we want to talk about what we got here?
Yeah,
First, okay.
I'm very in on either Devontae Adams. We can double tap Adams and like Neighbors to like offset like old major target share, new maximum upside. I think that's what we do. We can have our cake and eat it too with the duality of man type of situation. And we get the top 2 rookie wide receivers in the class with Malik Neighbors, who I'll actually select first. Draft Malik Neighbors, and then we'll take Devontae Adams.
Love it. And it's funny, shout out to Dan Williamson. He and I had the ADP battle series on Player Profiler where he had Deebo Samuel and I had Malik Neighbors, and people are juxtaposed against who do you take. My argument for Malik Neighbors is really this time next year, it's not a matter of Malik Neighbors versus Deebo Samuel. We're going to be deciding between Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr., who ironically we have both on the same team. We finessed, and I don't feel weird about it at all having Harrison and Neighbors one bit.
Not at all. You in these types of tournaments, like in Bestball, we want the crusty guys. We want the guys who we know are going to get theirs. But there's unknown upside with Marvin Harrison. There's unknown upside with Malik Neighbors. We can try to project it. And, in my projections, Marvin Harrison is okay. And in my projections, Malik Neighbors is okay. They're lower in the projections than where we drafted them. But what's interesting is that these types of rookie wide receivers especially spike near the end. And notice we've kind of pushed people to now be getting wide receiver thirsty, and they're feeling the pressure. Like the who is it? The 1-4 drafter who took Caleb Williams at QB 12. I mean, he's kind of kicking himself probably a little bit that he didn't take Garrett Wilson.
Well, that's where I like that we have our anchor sandwich at the quarterback position. And going back to what we were talking about just before the turn picks, where you mentioned Kirk Cousins and the players like Jared Goff, Tua in the 3rd round, the beauty of Superflex and now entering with this TriFLEX is that there are so many appealing receivers, tight ends, and running backs that just float so further down in ADP, where in single quarterback competitions, you see a cliff past the 3rd and 4th round where it's like, okay, there's a sharp decline. The beauty is because all 12 people have varying degrees of their commitment to all 4 positions, you're having opportunities that spring up, especially based on how you draft and based on how we're drafting, where we've anchored. We are not fearful of anchoring with Josh Allen. We're establishing some dominance, especially at the turn pick. I feel very comfortable at tight end. Do you not? So the pressure is off. Really, how we need to finesse this is at what point we get that second quarterback and third quarterback, of course. And if we get some of the guys that you and I had spoke to, whether it's Will Levis, Justin Fields, I think we're going to feel very good about ourselves. So we'll just have to put a bow at some point, and that bow may be in some of these mid rounds. And then, of course, the rest of the draft becomes easier, tapping into some running back contingent upside.
Well, and drafting Malik Neighbors gives us, Daniel Jones, as a very late selection. Makes sense. And notice that there haven't been any quarterbacks who've gone off over the last 24 picks now. It's been 24 selections, no quarterbacks, or no, I take that back. It's been 21 selections. I missed Cousins there for a second, but one quarterback in 24 picks tells you just the massive tier break Now we get Matthew Stafford finally. He was waiting around, but he waited too long, I think. I don't think you can go like quarterback 18 as your quarterback 1 in this, given that I know that you usually don't get Tyreek and Breece Hall in formats, but that you have to start a quarterback every week. And this is a 4-point passing touchdown. Stafford doesn't rush. There's not upside or pathway for him to access. He needs ungodly touchdown rates to get him even into like the Dak Prescott conversation.
Well, that's where I also think it's silly that the person went. Granted, we talked about the 11 hole went with Burrow Chase, but it's silly to go Burrow over Jaden Daniels in the 4-point passing touchdown because you have that Konami upside. I see that applicable on underdog as well. So the beauty is in the first round of the draft, you have people get shy of Patrick Mahomes, but we know Patrick Mahomes can hit those passing numbers. You've got Hurts, in addition to our Allen, Lamar, A-Rich, Kyler. Stroud is going to be that player who does he regress, and then this person is paying the rake or going too far. The price is too inflated on CJ Stroud. We'll see in this 4-point passing touchdown tournament how that is.
And I mean, I don't hate any of the players through the first 4 rounds for the 10 hole, but when it's Stafford, yeah, he has to come back around with Justin Herbert and pray to God that Justin Herbert is
great call.
Gonna be the guy. Yeah, I think that was a good comeback pick. But it's still tough when you're now pegged into, well, I needed to take these quarterbacks at 18 and 19.
Well, Bradley, do you like putting yourself in a hole like that in a bailout spot when you're drafting?
No.
And now notice, talking about the sandwich, right? Picks 1 through 4, they have solid players. Granted, our tier will be different, but what we have, our sandwich to start off with Allen, the sandwich that's between wherever we end up at quarterback. Don't you love Kincaid, Harrison, Neighbors, Adams?
Delicious.
Yep. I feel like we're not bailing out, and the closest we'll have to go and bail out is where we finesse again that second and that third quarterback.
Well, we're coming up here. Our pick is in 6 selections. And I think that some quarterbacks can come back to us, but none of them like I'm looking to, like, we can push it a little bit. I still think I'm not a big fan of Josh Jacobs. I am a fan of Rachaad White in full PPR. We don't have a running back yet. I think he's a nice selection in this type of format. Rachaad White is in normal FFPC, he's my 20th overall player and my RB6. He's just utilized so much in the passing game. I'm not too worried about Bucky Irving. Sure, he was nice in college, but if he was really that good, he would have been a day 2 selection. I'm sorry. Like, it's just, that's the reality. They love Rachaad White in Tampa. So if he's there, he's going to be one of the selections. It's going to be very hard for me to not pick, at that spot.
I think, to your point, it's either Rachaad White. If he gets sniped on us, I love what I've been hearing about Kenneth Walker.
Yes,
getting the 3-down roll. So I think we're in alignment there. And then do you just want to lean into more wide receiver, or do we think, what do you think, Bradley?
I'm just going to put Rachaad White in the queue.
Yep.
And then I think we can push quarterback still.
You want to push it another turn?
I think one more turn is fine.
Yep.
And then, we can go Ken Walker. I'm okay with Ken Walker as well.
You want a double tap?
Yeah, he doesn't get a lot of pass catching, but he's RB15, and right now he's RB15 in my rankings. This would get him to RB13.
Yep.
It's a stance, but it's fine. So I'm okay with that. Rachaad White will select.
So I think, Bradley, based on what your conviction is here, with you going Rachaad White and us getting Ken Walker at the double tap, I'm thinking you're feeling confident at the 8-9 turn that we will have a receiver that we like and we will have a quarterback that we like. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, looking at who might be there, like Calvin Ridley could be there, which I would love. Keenan Allen at this spot, Deontay Johnson would be
Deontay
good.
Johnson. Yep.
Yep, those are all viable options. So I think getting Ken Walker here locks down
Yep.
that RB2 role for us.
Yep.
And then let's everyone else fight over these, the see where the draft comes, and we'll just take some value. We can just gobble that up if we need.
And maybe we start another run like we did with the receivers, and people are just trailing us. Now, speaking of the
Well,
sandwich,
they are. Look at that.
There
Joe
it is.
Mixon,
Beautiful. You love to see it. Speaking of that sandwich, I want to applaud the people who went. The person who went Kyler Murray, then they went Jefferson, McBride, Achane Pacheco. They sandwiched it with Deshaun Watson. They probably could have waited, but that is a good point. If you want to stop, hey, we're on a trip. There's a rest stop. Let's pick up Deshaun Watson there, and that's a good build there. Although I will say they're going to be uphill at receiver. You got to think they're in their next 2 picks on their way back to us. They're going to have to scoop wide receiver.
We just got breaking news that Chris Evans, running back for the Cincinnati Bengals, tore his patellar tendon in practice and will miss the entire regular season. So that doesn't really move things too much for fantasy. It was going to be Chase Brown and Zach Moss, but maybe Travion Williams becomes a late round dart throw consideration in Cincinnati.
And then I would say the Bengals are just a team that's a candidate for if there's a cut at the running back position on another team. Let's say it's, Huff, Blake Watson from the Broncos.
Samaje Perine returns.
That too. Yeah, exactly. Denver. The theme is Denver. So Perine just fumbling, bumbling, dropping that pass there. I think we're in alignment there. It maybe only crystallizes what's already been crystallized is the fact that it's Chase Brown and Zach Moss. What's your take on archetypes of running backs, with Moss being a 40%er, Moss being like a 60% between the gaps guy, Chase Brown being a 40% high upside player in the pass game? How do you think it's going to divvy up? Do you think it's more 50-50?
Yeah, so I pulled up the ranking or the projections. Zach Moss I have as my running back 27. Chase Brown is running back 36. And there's been a lot of love in the FFPC streets for Chase Brown as of late. He's been jumping like 2.5 rounds. Lots of love. I get it. He is a dynamic pass catcher out of the backfield, got great speed. Here's the issue. He is not good between the tackles.
Right.
And if he gets all of Joe Mixon's receiving work, or most of Joe Mixon's receiving work, he's still a viable, like, we're not scoffing at RB36. Like, he's going to get you some points, but you need the touchdown equity. And I think Zach Moss profiles as more of that between the tackles type of guy. I have Moss projected for 58% rush share, just about 200 rush attempts, about 800 rush yards, 6 rushing touchdowns, and still involved in the passing game a little bit. So I like Zach Moss still over Chase Brown because the Bengals are going to be better this year. They're going to be scoring. They're going to be in the red zone. And who's going to be out there? Well, it's Zach Moss because he can pass protect. Chase Brown, we've got questions whether he can.
And whether or not you're an outlier, 2 things. With Joe Mixon, RB6 last year in 2023, drafters, you can't piece together Moss and Brown. People are trying to get RB6 out of one or the other, and it sounds like people are bullish on Chase Brown in that manner. But I've come to the realization and understanding, especially when you're layering running back rooms, if I take a guy like Chase Brown, I understand that he's going to cap at that 40% level, where he will have unless he's a huge outlier, there will be a drop in efficiency. So even more usage, there will be an experienced flatline. So unless it's somebody in the manner of Devon Achane, an archetype player like a Jalen Warren, a Chase Brown, a Jaleel McLaughlin, you're going to want them up to that 40% threshold. But bell cow usage, I don't think is necessarily in the picture. And I say that as somebody who really loves Jaylen Warren. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think Najee profiles as that as that bell cow. Jaylen Warren. I was talking about like comps yesterday with Dave Terpoli from FFPC, and the comp that I used was Jaylen Warren is the ceiling of, why am I blanking on him right now? Jaleel McLaughlin. Like the best case scenario for Jaleel McLaughlin is a Jaylen Warren type. The problem is that when we talk about like Jaylen Warren, Najee has done nothing to lose the trust of the coaching staff.
And
He's
Mike
just not
Tomlin
been
loves him.
He's just not been super efficient. He's just not been explosive, not been dynamic, dealt with a few injuries here or there, but there's no locker room issues. There's no like, oh, well, he's complaining about this or that. Yeah, there's nothing that has given the coaching staff a reason to move away from him so terribly. Like,
Right.
yes, he isn't super efficient, but he's going to get you some yards. So the Jaylen Warren profile also doesn't meet what the Steelers want to do oftentimes, which is run the ball between the tackles. They're not an offense that's going to use sweeps or designed runs in that way very often. So, you know, they want to use Najee for that particular role. And Jaylen Warren, fortunately or unfortunately, you know, he's going to get some touches, but not as high leverage touches in terms of like goal line. He will get third down, long down and distance type of situations, but that type of work is then split, the high leverage touches with Najee.
Yes.
So,
and I think I learned the lesson, and hopefully gamers have learned the lesson on a guy like Tony Pollard, where it busted at a certain point, and there was only so high you could go on that gear before it went. And unless and where the players, this archetype fails, there you go, see Sam Darnold, where this
Jeremiah, you might have to take over the podcast.
I got you, man.
I'm having a heart attack here. Wait,
Sam
what?
Darnold just went off the board in the 8th round.
Holy crud.
So, hey,
what?
I like our chances coming back at the turn here.
Man,
but unless you're a huge
that team, you were just complimenting the Kyler team. Oh, so smart. Oh, delightful. Oh, they paired. And then they came back with George Pickens, which is at wide receiver 32. Fine, we're okay with that. And then they just pooped the bed with Sam Darnold.
And we talk about the amount of players who can fall. In the 7th round, they went and got George Pickens. So they must have gone to take a dump and forgot their phone, forgot their device. That's what I'm going to go with. They just went and took a big dump.
Guacamole.
And now they're paying for it. All right, so Daniel Jones went. We were looking at him.
Yeah, I'm looking at we got to hit some wide receiver. We need at least one coming away from here, but the problem is we got zapped a little bit with a wide receiver there. You know, looking at who might be available, Christian Watson is there. I don't mind him as a wide receiver 4. JSN is there.
I like JSN. I was going to say
Rome Odunze. Hold up. Rome Odunze. Talk me out of him.
Hey, Keenan Allen is 230 pounds. He's eating deep dish pizza left and right. and
he loves the Chicago deep dish.
Yeah,
let me tell
you,
baby. All right, so we got Rome Odunze in the queue.
Hey, and why not go fearless with the 3 stud rookie receivers, Harrison, Neighbors, Odunze, and I like JSN.
Brian Thomas.
You want that? You want to do it? I'll do it.
Why not?
Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely.
The top 4 rookie wide receivers.
Yep. In college, we always used to tell people you won't click that. So there we go.
Oh, let's go.
Yes.
Oh man, talk about there we go. Or do we want quarterback at this spot?
Which quarterback would you want?
Bo Nix. Like of the viable starting quarterbacks.
Yeah, the only other
left,
receiver I would go towards would be JSN at this point, aside
Derek
from
Carr, Bo
DJ.
Nix are the only others that are legit full year starting quarterbacks, I think.
So, okay. Are there any quarterbacks? Is this, have we gone past the point a little bit? People got us on this turn
I think
with
they got Will
yeah,
Levis, Bryce Young, Daniel Jones.
and Daniel Jones. Yeah, so why not? I would say go with Bo Nix. I would go with Bo Nix over Derek Carr.
I'm going to go with Bo Nix as well.
Beautiful.
We're going to draft Bo Nix. And guess who's still out there?
Oh, I know. Cortland Sutton.
Cortland freaking Sutton. That's right.
Yeah. Yep. I knew it. I was going to ask you earlier in this draft at some point on our turns. I was like, hey, are you thinking our fourth receiver could end up being Cortland Sutton? But now we may have the luxury of having him as our fifth receiver. And Bradley, for somebody who got torched and fell off the cliff at the receiver position last year, how are you feeling about this team with Harrison, Neighbors, Adams, Adunze?
I think that we're going to still need to clean up a little bit on the back end of the wide receivers. Like, I think we're going to have to take some maybe unsexy, some unappealing wide receivers. Okay. I like Jacoby Myers.
Jacoby Myers. I knew it. Yes.
He's on my list. I got sniped on him last night in the FFPC $125 entry tournament. Yep. I was ticked about that, but Jacoby Myers is like top 40 wide receiver, and he's probably going to go at wide receivers. He went wide receiver 60 last night.
How about Jerry Jeudy?
At that price, I don't hate it.
Yeah.
At that price, I don't hate it. I'm not pro Jeudy. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's because I drafted him in a couple rookie drafts many years ago, and he's still garbage. But
you're thinking of burn rate, yeah.
The other thoughts that I have include Josh Palmer is there. He's going to be a starter. Yeah, I think we just need to continue to hammer this because the running backs are going to running back, mm-hmm. And it's full PPR, lots of flex. Look, we're only at running back 17 through 9 rounds. So there's going to be running backs available to us.
Here's the question. Do you think, twofold question, do you think Tajay Spears can come back to us? And how would you feel about TJ Hockenson as our second tight end were he to fall back to us?
Both of those are great ideas. I'm also, I still like Jonathan Brooks, but mm-hmm. Blake Corum is also very interesting. Though at those spots, Corum is I'm going to move up the draft board a little bit for the viewers at home, but Corum is on the team that can make him a king. Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford are kingmakers. So at this point, we want to take shots on, guys who can get us that elite upside. And even not, Kyron will probably split it for 60-40 anyways to start.
How do you, and also speaking of, you said kingmaker with Blake Corum, how do you think of Braylon Allen as a potential kingmaker?
Oh. Amazing.
Yeah.
He is the most undervalued handcuff.
So now we're talking about, so let's talk about layers to our team. We have a layered running back room where we have White, Walker. They are the guys. So running backs 3, 4, 5. How do you feel about, and we talked about this, where you're pressing it down. We're on the contingent upside train where we're not so much worried and concerned about week 1 viability. We're looking for overall season viability and chopping it up between. But now Spears may be one of those players who we don't have to worry about. He'd be closer between a 1 and 2 layer player.
Right.
But the idea of Corum, we could investigate some other names. Braylon Allen. I feel like throughout the draft,
We
there's
can
some guys
wait
like
a
that. I
while
know
for Braylon Allen. I wouldn't be
you like
surprised if
Justice
Braylon
Hill.
Allen is like a round 17, 18 type of guy in this format.
Now, he wouldn't bump up at all just from the shine of the visual in the preseason game against the Commanders.
I don't think this room is going to react that way.
Okay.
Like Aaron Jones just went off at the end of the 9th round.
Ooh, that's tough. How do you feel about us taking Bo Nix and then somebody getting Justin Fields a few picks later? Do you still like that pick that we got with Bo Nix?
Yeah, Nix showed that he was mobile.
Yeah.
My concern is that when his feet weren't set, which was often, he looked skittish in the preseason. That's my only concern with him, because he's trying to throw it deep and he's like, oh, I don't know, and I'll get it out. But when his feet are set, okay, boom, and he can get it to the guy. Bo Nix was, out of 142 qualified quarterbacks in college last year, he was 129th in rate of throws down 20 yards or more.
That's yeah. I like that. And with Bo Nix, just something interesting. I feel like he's a player who, if he can carve and play within structure, he has that ability. If you simplify it, like a West Coast offense, I think Bo Nix has a viable path with Sean Payton steering him in that direction. If he doesn't have to do everything, granted, this Denver team isn't necessarily a set of weapons where you say, okay, we got everything to run. Similar to Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams has everything set up around him. But I actually think the structure that Sean Payton has, as much as we may be frustrated with Sean Payton, Bo Nix is actually going to be set up, I think, in a very good way for the structure of the offense. And it's going to take some time for them to get more elite talent around him. And dare I say, he could be a system quarterback who pays off.
I mean, he was selected by Sean Payton to be the dump off king.
Yep.
So that's what we saw last year with Russ and with the other quarterbacks that stepped in behind Russ. The reality is that the running backs are going to be involved in the passing game, and that's a low ADOT. It fits exactly with what Bo Nix did in college. High percentage throws, low ADOT, high confidence plays. He's not going to air it out very much, which is why you should be out on Marvin Mims.
Well, here's a big throwback. If he could be like 40-year-old Rich Gannon, where Rich Gannon would throw the 3, 4, 5, 7-yard slant into Jerry Rice, and Jerry Rice could do the rest. Tim Brown could do the rest. It takes pressure, and you can carve up defenses. And to your point, where I see quarterbacks make so many errors is their lower half of their body. Earlier in the season, Daniel Jones had just like a flubbed, it might have been a wheel route to a running back, and it just looked terrible because it was just a short arm throw in the short distance. But what I saw was his bottom half wasn't really set. So that was a big issue for Daniel Jones. And to your point with Bo Nix, if he could fix his feet, he may end up being able to carve out something very good within the structure of this Broncos system.
So Jeremiah, we're getting up close to our pick here. I have Jacoby Myers in the queue. I'm feeling pretty good about that as our wide receiver 5. He would be wide receiver 55, worst case scenario. This is a low risk, high reward type of player who has been a top 30 or so wide receiver each of the last 3 seasons.
Yep.
I'm a big proponent of Jacoby Myers, even with the addition of Brock Bowers there. Who are other?
How do you feel about him and Tyjae Spears?
You're a Tyjae Spears guy. I like Tony Pollard, but they've been talking up both during camp, and they've been virtually indistinguishable. Give me the case for Tyjae Spears.
Tyjae Spears, 52 receptions last year. To me, with Tony Pollard coming into town, we saw Tajay Spears ADP creep up. This is in single quarterback contest, by the way, up into the 5th round. Getting Tony Pollard to sign is just like this aberration. It's like finding Costco in a desert when you're absolutely dehydrated and you want to pick up the Rayo sauce, the 2 for whatever deal. Like you need all the stuff that you need, all those prices. It's just beautiful because now just hidden, and Matt Kelly, Podfather, he talks about the meat shield. Well, Tony Pollard is the meat shield for Tajay Spears, and we're not having to pay the inflated prices. I
Well,
love,
we
and
went.
ambiguous backfields give us these opportunities.
Tajay Spears put up really nice efficiency metrics last year, but Tony Pollard also was the number 1 PFF rush graded running back from week 11 on. Like both of them are very, very good, but I think we can continue to push running back. Do you want to go TJ Hockenson here?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Let's
Yep.
go TJ
I'm with you.
Hockenson, tight end 14. We don't need him to play right away. He might be the safety outlet, safety blanket for Nick Mullins, not Sam Darnold.
Yep. Well, also think about it. We're in a way we're not even having to yank the steering wheel because somebody else has Kittle and Brock Bowers. We've gotten TJ Hockenson. It's just so perfect. Things are setting up with Darnold is there. Who does he have left? It's Jefferson, and now Addison. It's murky with the injury. It's murky with the suspension. When TJ Hockenson comes back, we're talking about a guy who, with Kirk Cousins, would be a top 2 tight end being drafted. Without Kirk Cousins, safely, even with Sam Darnold, I think would be a top 5 tight end. And we're getting him here at tight end 14. He's been the perfect tight end to layer with a stud elite tight end. So you take, like what we've done, the cushion of Dalton Kincaid to have TJ Hockenson right after that. Sign me up. And I know you're high on him. He's my number 1 exposed tight end in Bestball. Tell me what you like about this TJ Hockenson pick.
Yeah, Hockenson, to speak to that, he is tied with Taysom Hill as my number 1 most exposed tight end at 20% exposure, because you either decide. So how I've been approaching TJ Hockenson is you've either gone elite tight end at the beginning, and then you were getting extremely priced down tight end TJ Hockenson, round 12, round 11 here, but round 12, 13 in other formats. And you either pair him with an elite, or you just tap TJ Hockenson and Tyler Conklin and Noah Fant. And maybe you do a 4th tight end if you really want, but typically you can go with those 3 and just let TJ Hockenson lead you to fantasy goodness. I don't know if I necessarily say he's auto top 5 with Sam Darnold, but top 10 isn't going to be hard. Like top 10 is easy access for him. So like we're talking about a player who I have in my best ball value rating adjusted for missing time. So I've adjusted for him to play. He's missing 6 games.
Yep.
I just say auto miss 6 games. He is still my player 39 in regular FFPC tight end premium leagues. Player 39, tight end 8. And we're getting him at tight end 14. So he should be more so going, if it was this type of format, round 5. And we're getting him in round 11.
And the beauty is we have alongside that double pairing with going Jacoby Myers as our 5th wide receiver. We have a possibility of splicing off. Devontae Adams gets traded at a certain point in the season. It's all you can eat for Jacoby Myers. And then, of course, we know it's not like Devontae Adams is just going to go to a bum franchise. He's going to go where he's going to absolutely eat. And then you can set the world on fire with our 3 rookie receivers, Adunze, Neighbors, and Harrison, who, even if they're just like 80% of their ability, as they onboard midseason to late season, this team could really fly.
So here's the other reason why I wanted to push off running back is yes, we saw 4 running backs go in this round, but still available to us
Yep.
with about 1 round left. Tony Pollard, Javonte Williams, Jonathan Brooks, Tazi Spears, Zach Moss, Brian Robinson, Devin Singletary, Austin Eckler in full PPR, Jerome Ford, Blake Corum is still there. Like, yes, like it's going to be very easy to double tap running backs. Now two more go off. Sure. Jonathan Brooks. There we go. But it's at this point where either value is going to fall for us or we're going to get some running backs, or I mean, it makes sense to get like a Blake Corum type at this spot.
Yes.
And
the pressure is off entirely.
Mm.
I feel, tell me if you agree, I feel like we're set at tight ends.
Yes.
We will want a third quarterback to go along with Allen and Nix. We love our receivers. We're still going to want to scaffold a few receivers left to go. But the beauty is with the running backs, with White and Walker, we know we're filling up those first 2 running back positions, and the overflow flex can veer towards the receivers we have. There's less pressure on if it is Blake Corum, well, he's got to play week 1. We don't have that pressure immediately. So we're sandwiching, and then we're scaffolding later, and then we are just baking in all this upside available for our team.
Oh, so delicious. We're in the driver's seat, Jeremiah. I don't think we've ever been in a point where we've been like the Bo Nix pick was like, okay, well, we need to make that pick. But all the other picks have been like, all right, let's stick it to the rest of the board here. And happy with Jacoby Myers, happy with Hockenson, Odunze, Walker. Yeah, the only one that like sticks out is Bo Nix, but this is also Superflex. So a 4-point passing touchdown, it's possible that a flex gets in there anyways. So I'm not really losing my mind over that selection, but of our first 11 picks, I think that was the like the 11th best one.
And we talk about like, don't worry about having an imbalanced roster through your draft. Eventually you want some balance to the entire structure.
Yes.
But if you're fearless in not having structure, especially early to mid, it can set you up so well for the entirety of the draft and put you in pockets where you're out of order here. Like in your life, sometimes you got to be out of order with how much you're doing and taking on to get level somewhere else in life, right? So sometimes in these drafts, you have to be out of order in order to get level to ascend. So I like what we did, and hopefully that analogy is understandable to our audience.
I did put some wide receivers in the queue as well. I put Brandon Cooks, Mike Williams, Wan'Dale Robinson, guys who
you love
either
Wan'Dale.
I love Wan'Dale. Cooks and Williams offer like old man upside, but Wan'Dale is just PPR floor type of guy. Will just fit in the flex, not super flexy, but he's a guy that he works out. Like wide receiver 60, sure, he's fine. Okay.
Any concern with I believe Brandon Cooks left practice today for the Cowboys?
We're still monitoring that. I haven't gotten any update, outside of he just went back to the locker room.
And then with veterans too, they can be wily with that. So
yes.
Are you thinking to double tap receiver here?
I want one at least, and then I'm hoping and praying for Blake Corum.
Yep. So
I'm
between
also
Wan'Dale,
toying with
I'm
toying with Austin Eckler too, because of the PPR format. It's tantalizing.
And then the nice thing is Eckler, when he hits, he is overflow of Rachaad White and Ken Walker.
Yes. I think we do want one wide receiver and one running back here.
Okay, so if Corum isn't taken, I'm very tempted. Contingency plan, Eckler.
Yes.
And then one of these receivers. How do you feel about Wan'Dale with Neighbors? Do you love it, or is there do you feel like we're It's a
It's
woozy, it's a
fine. I
wazi,
think
it's
they're
good.
independent.
Okay, I like that. So you want to
Do
go
you
with
want?
Quorum and
We're gonna
Wandale?
go with Quorum, and then, uh, or do you want to consider Rico Dowdle here? Because Rico Dowdle is the one who has the juice, or do you think
I think somebody's going to end up in that room, be it Miles Sanders, Khalil Herbert,
Sanders is
another running
bad,
back.
Khalil Herbert is good, but we can attack Herbert much later if we want.
But how good is Rico Dowdle if somebody were to enter that room into that phrase? Somebody from the Denver backfield.
I think the Dallas Cowboys really like Rico.
Okay. I think then we go Corum and Rico here. And we're not afraid to catch the Rico charge here.
Yes, let's push the wide because there's a lot of running backs still out there too, and people will go with that. So I think that we could still get Wandell later. Same with like Mike Williams.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially
Oh, that
with
felt
the
so good.
yeah, yep. Especially with the injury fear on Mike Williams, he's just going to be such a value. Especially we're getting to round 15, where Bradley, can you tell the audience how you feel about how many weeks representative does a player need to post into your lineup from the bench who's drafted round 15 through 20 to be effective in a tournament like this?
Yeah, with a tournament this small, they don't need to be super effective.
Mm-hmm.
Like it really, like, you're hoping that your big guys are the ones who carry you. Whereas like when you get to the larger tournaments, you need to be nailing these late picks. You really do. But with the bigger tournaments, you get 20 entries, you get 50 entries, you get 150 entries. So you get to take your chances and rotate through. At this point, like, you're just taking the best guy. Like, you're not trying to like galaxy brain, well, I've got like these super stacks that I'm trying to like. This is essentially a pretty closed, it's just a larger but enclosed league where, I'm just putting it out there that Rashad White, Kenneth Walker, Blake Corum, Rico Dowdle are going to be the ones who bring me to the promised land.
I love it. And again, just talking about layering, we know we have the layer in White and Walker, and Corum is going to be that player who can join contingency wise. But Rico Dowdle will fluctuate, maybe one of those 40% type of players, but in a PPR setting, we like that. We don't necessarily need Rico to be a bell cow, but to your point, PPR setting, getting those high weeks where he's got maybe 5-6 catches, 40 yards, and he falls into the end zone. You want that to hit your lineup, especially with this TriFLEX format as well, not just the Superflex. And Bradley, how do you feel we're doing? Speaking to the TriFLEX, our positional allocation, we have our 2 running back spots filled. We have our quarterback, our Superflex. We're going to put in for now Bo Nix. We love our tight end room. Our receivers are excellent. Where do you think we're at with how this team is right now? Who do you expect to be filling out those TriFLEX positions?
Yeah, I think Jacoby Myers is going to be easily in that TriFLEX, that one of those TriFLEX spots. That's going to be feel really nice. I think as we get into rounds 14, 15, 16, this is where we pick players that will give us early season value. I know a name that just came off the board at RB38, Chuba Hubbard, fits that description.
Yeah.
The early season value that, may not need to be as high of a ceiling type of player, but can get us 12 points, 13, 15 points and be okay with that. Like, maybe they've got some touchdown possibility. Looking through here, like a tight.
You know who's still on the board?
Tell me.
Jalen Wright.
There we go. Well, for a while, I'll put him in the queue.
Sorry, I got excited. Continue with that thought.
Yeah, Jalen Wright is there for sure. Tyler Algier is there. Braylon Allen, Ray Davis. I don't think we touch running back until we get to, unless other people start tapping into that tier, and then we just get our guys in that tier, if that makes sense.
Well, to what we spoke to earlier, we'll have our pockets to pick on these kingmakers because we talked about Corum being a kingmaker. We talked about another tier later, Braylon Allen. You spoke to
Yes.
Tyler Algier. Do you feel like since there's tiers of those kingmakers, to your point, we can gap it here and go to another position? Since we
Yes.
double tapped, of course, Corum, Dowdle, as we're scaffolding, we'll attack other positions. Now, be it receiver, it sounds like, do you feel like we're done at tight end? Is it just we're dancing and finessing between receiver, a third quarterback, and then on that, the tiers for those kingmaker running backs, we're just picking them as we go?
I think we can still get one more tight end in this build. I like a lot of the later ones that have like revealed themselves now. So we're talking Colby Parkinson, Greg Dortch, Theo Johnson is in there. Michael Mayer is a consideration. Those are some tight ends that I think would look really nice on this team.
How about Ben Sinnott?
Ben Sinnott, I like that one. I would like it better if Zach Ertz wasn't on the team because I think Ertz fits the we'll get some points early in the season. Sinnott might just overlap Hockenson a little too much.
Yes. So to your point, because you were speaking about, the running backs with Chuba Hubbard being a guy who could get early season usage, and you're speaking to early season usage with the tight end room being Kincaid, Hockenson, with Hockenson being out, even though we love Kincaid to float the entire tight end room early on from the jump, are you hoping and thinking of an archetype of a tight end who can float early? Like early season.
Yeah, early season would be like Zach Ertz, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a lot of other early season floaters late. That's like sticking out to me. That's left out there. Like Cade Otton is a starting tight end. Hunter Henry is a starting tight end. Like those are guys that I don't see anyone in that room pushing them positionally. Eric All might push Mike Gesicki. Maybe Gesicki fits into that profile if you're thinking it.
Are you bought in on Isaiah Likely?
No.
Yeah.
Only in a contingency value, yes. Isaiah Likely was really good in college. He had one of the highest PFF receiving grades, yards per route run among tight ends. I think it was number 2 in yards per route run each of his final 2 seasons in college among all tight ends in college. So Isaiah Likely is really good, but he's at best behind Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, probably in line with Rashad Bateman, if not behind him, because positional deference. So you're talking at best the 4th receiving option, and we don't know if Derrick Henry is going to get what his involvement's going to look like. I don't think the big dog is going to command targets, but he's still going to get a sprinkling. So Isaiah Likely is the contingent upside tight end.
And based on our build, you would want to shy away from a contingent upside tight end because in a way we're with TJ Hockenson, we are just banking on him being what he was, and he becomes contingent because he's coming back from injury.
Right.
Well, John, who just went, I would have loved him. He's somebody I'm a big fan of.
He's got the speed. He was pretty good last year. I think that was undervalued. He also has had some rushes in his career, which is interesting.
Give him RPOs. I'm firmly convicted on that. And it's funny because we love Kyle Pitts and we talk about burn rate on players, on coaches. Arthur Smith burned a lot of people. And who was on the front burner to the wrath for part of that just in front of Arthur Smith? It was Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith has nothing to do. Oh, there goes Wandale. Has nothing to do with Arthur Smith. Yeah. But I love Jonnu Smith, the player, and now he's independent of that situation. Go for him for Miami. So Wandale gets sniped on us. What are you thinking, Bradley?
Well, we've got some like still day 2 wide receivers, which are interesting. We've got Michael Wilson, who was round 3 last year. We've got Jermaine Burton, Jalen McMillan. I don't want to wait around for a Ricky Pearsall or Xavier Legette. Maybe that's. I definitely don't want Pearsall. I'm more agnostic toward Xavier Legette.
So do you want to come away with double tap receiver here, or do you
I think we could still. Well, Algier just went off, so I think we do want to go a wide receiver and running back here.
All right, so you've got Jalen Wright in the queue at the top. You want to
Yeah.
go Jalen Wright?
I think so, because
Can't go wrong with Jalen Wright.
Go wrong with Jalen Wright. Yeah, so we can go Jalen Wright. Then I do want, among contingent upside wide receivers, it has to be Xavier Legette, right? This is the team that drafted him, the coach that drafted him, the quarterback whisperer, right? And it's just Deontay Johnson, who has a serious history of injuries.
And if you buy into it, the investment is there, and they are a delusional team, so they will try and make him Deebo Samuel. So even if they're delusional, we want them to be, because that would elicit that sort of a usage for Xavier Legette. XL, they're calling him, is going to get the close proximity, line of scrimmage, balls, his direction. So I really do like that idea. You're baking in, and this is more towards the running back discussion, but we can apply it to our running back room, to our receiver room. You're putting in Xavier Legette. There's no pressure to get Xavier Legette into the starting lineup. And like you say, there's contingent upside there. Another one would have been Jalen McMillan. We like what he's been able to do. There he goes. So it's topical. We were right, but it's funny when you're in drafts and that happens. You know you were on the right path, because that drafter is probably thinking the predicament we were in. Oh, should I go Xavier Legette or McMillan if they come? Oh, well, Bradley and Jeremiah made that decision for me. Xavier Legette's out. They go Jalen McMillan and Michael Wilson. There we go. So we spoke to that tier. And of course, topical to what we talked about just before that with the tight end, there goes contingency upside, Isaiah Likely. Who are the other tight ends in that person's room of the second picker, the person right next to us?
Yeah, let me pull that up. Isaiah Likely and Dallas Goedert and Sam Laporta.
All right. Well, it's just kind of, they have it stacked, Goddard with Hurts. So like us doing Kincaid. And so, hey, look at us. We go Kincaid and Allen. They do their own little version of the
trendsetters.
Yes. Yep.
J.K. Dobbins is a nice value here at RB47. I think both the Chargers are kind of a good value.
I really like Gus Bus the most. I've drafted probably, like in my conviction levels, I like Gus Bus the most for a level. Vidal, I don't buy that he's necessarily going to get cut. I have probably the most Vidal, and I've been out on J.K. Dobbins. How have you been splicing up the Chargers backfield?
I have 0% exposure to Gus Edwards. Really? That's not true. There's no way that's true.
Oh, because I thought yeah.
Hold on. Just hold on.
Sure. And I'll speak to the audience. Ricky Pearsall just went. So about a round ago when we were not.
Dobbins is at 11%.
Okay. Yeah.
Whew, I was worried there. It only was showing tight ends, and that's why it was like.
That's what it was.
So Dobbins was at 11, and Gus is at 3%. So the conviction rate is significantly different for JK versus Gus.
For you.
For me.
Now, you're more there. Now, with that revealed, prior to that, what was your stance? Like, if you were thinking, like, who do you want now?
Dobbins, I think the contingency ups are the upside is so much higher with J.K. Dobbins. Mm-hmm. I think he's just more dynamic. Gus is like consistent trudger between the tackles, going to get you 4.5, 4.8 yards per carry.
Yep.
But the Harbaugh offense isn't going to get the pass catching anyways. You have to wonder, is J.K. Dobbins shot? Not really shot, but is his this is not a Brian Robinson situation. Is J.K. Dobbins zapped? There we go. Is his electricity zapped from him? And I think that's a fair question. But so far, we haven't heard negative things about J.K. Dobbins, just mysterious injuries this offseason from Gus. So that's why I've been leaning more into, we want the Chargers backfield. We know it's going to be fantasy goodness. And Vidal, yes, I agree with you. The market overreacted perhaps to one beat reporter, but at the same time, like, Vidal hasn't given us reason to be like, oh, he's doing amazing. He's clearly at least a distant third on this team.
Oh, there goes your boy, Colby Parkinson. So pour some out there.
Boo.
But hey, sharp drafter there. Good on them to go and select Colby Parkinson. I will say with Gus Edwards, with layered running back rooms, I like Gus Edwards as I'm patching along a third or a fourth running back sometimes in those rooms. However, speaking to the archetype where there's those 40%ers where they're pass catchers but not so good at between the gaps, Gus Edwards is good between the gaps, but I think there is a governor on him as well where you're only going to get so much. And he's a player who can fill in your requisite flex spot, but it's never going to be something to the sky. So maybe to what you're speaking, you still think if you set aside injury and that's not a factor, that J.K. Dobbins has the most upside. Would you say that?
Yeah, like the standard deviation outcome for Gus Edwards is much smaller. Let's say. Whereas J.K. Dobbins, we know what he showed us before the injury.
Yeah.
Since we're recording, I'm just going to speak openly. Russell Wilson has fallen significantly in terms of ADP. At this point, we kind of do and are interested in a third quarterback. And in round 16, like, okay, like, Russ probably is the starting quarterback for Pittsburgh for the if I said earlier in the podcast 40% chance Justin Fields is starting week 17, then it's 60% chance that it's Russ, and so at this point, like, is his upside massive? But the gap here between, like, we haven't seen a quarterback in 3 rounds. So
yes,
look, I think this is a value pick if Russ is still there. And then I think double tapping Russ and a Roman Wilson for a nice little easy Pittsburgh stack could get us. No,
yeah,
Russ goes off, but that was the right idea. Yeah.
Yes. Well, yeah. So now, based on the quarterbacks that are available, are we getting? Is it gross disgusting to Gardner? Well, that would be some Raiders play right there.
Would be.
Or Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett. Like, how disgusting does it need to get? Granted, we don't necessarily have our pick of what we would like.
Who got selected? Marshawn Lloyd. I do want a wide receiver here, and maybe a tight end. I think we can continue to push quarterback a little bit. Like, if we're still gross, I want wide receiver and I want quarterback. I'm looking at, among the wide receivers, Jermaine Burton, Greg Dortch, and Roman Wilson. I think Dortch is going to feast.
Yes. That's the name that lights up. And there's so much of it. How much have you heard about Zay Jones?
Oh, he's behind him in the depth chart.
Right. So we know for sure, for a fact, but let's just reverse engineer it, right? We have Zay Jones back there. We're not hearing anything. Michael Wilson, we like him as the second guy at the running back in the receiver room. At the running back position, Benson is soaring down. You love James Conner. We love Kyler Murray to be a top 5 quarterback this year, maybe even top 3. Go back to Trey McBride. We like him to possibly be tight end 1 overall. And
Right.
then we're drafting Marvin Harrison in the early
So did we go? We got 15 seconds
Okay.
left. So we're looking at like a tight end or double tapping wide receiver, Wilson or Burton. I'd like Wilson.
Go Wilson. Go Wilson.
Roman Wilson. Boom. We've got a lot of rookies on this team, coach.
Yeah.
Got a lot of rookie wide receivers leaning into some old wily vets with Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams. But outside of that, we've got, and Greg Dortch. I mean, but let's pull up Greg Dortch's stats, because some people are like, oh, Greg Dortch isn't good. Greg Dortch, blah, blah, blah. When Greg Dortch plays majority of snaps, I'm not going to do this from memory. I'm just going to say 50% snap threshold. Let's go through his game logs. If he has played 50% of snaps or more, we're going to pull that up. Okay, here we go. 2019, he had no such games, so can't count 2019. 2020, he didn't play at all. 2021, he played 4 or 5 games, so doesn't count. 2022,
he played 16.
He played a bunch. Okay, 90% snap share. First game, wide receiver 29, 13 fantasy points. 75% snap share, 15.5 fans. 77% snap share, 17 fantasy points. He doesn't play 50% again until for another few weeks. He goes 1 catch for 5 yards and a touchdown. That 1 catch was a touchdown. 7.6 fantasy points. So far, his floor is 7.6. Then, but his ceiling is like in the 12s, 13s. Then he plays 90% snaps, 9 catches for 103 yards, 19 fantasy points, wide receiver 10. Fast forward to his next time, he's get 10 catches on 11 targets, 98 receiving yards. He's wide receiver 8 that week. Another 81% of snaps, 4 receptions, 15 yards, but 10 targets and 3 red zone targets, 5.5 fantasy points. So the expected fantasy points massively there. 68% of snaps, 4 for 30, fine. 8.5 fantasy points plus the rushing. So we're talking like a floor of 5 points in PPR, ceiling of 22 just in that season. And then let's look at this year when he played more than 75% of snaps. 13 fantasy points, 11 fantasy points, 3 fantasy points, 4, 12.5, 15.2, and 3.4. So what I'm getting at is that when he plays 50% of snaps or more, he most likely gets you at least 10 to probably 12 or 13 fantasy points. At wide receiver 78, that is a misprice.
I like it. And that's very sharp, because at this point you could see that it's such a dulled patch of the draft where, okay, well, he's not going to be at this level to an elite player, but based on where he's getting drafted, the value, and you talk about it, all this is what you talk about, best ball value rating,
right?
How he can matriculate up. You can find a hidden gem in Greg Dortch, and it's going to be an excellent electric offense. You know that the first 2 receiver spots are spoken for, but if we believe that Kyler Murray is going to be a top 5 quarterback, which I believe it, and they're going to have an electric offense, those ancillary pieces are going to get their requisite weeks. Greg Dortch is one of those players that you want to be clicking and having share too. And it doesn't all come from, I mean, look at all the electric offenses. There's other players who aren't necessarily the stars who will get theirs. And the beauty is it's best ball. We don't have to pick which week. We just know those weeks will happen given opportunity for Greg Dortch.
Yes, I'm trying to pull up Greg Dortch's best ball value rating from last year. Where would he be? Trying to find that doc. It's okay.
And not to mention how much Kyler Murray really talks him up. It makes me think of
They've got
Joe
good
Burrow.
chemistry.
Yeah. Joe Burrow talks about Andre Yoshivas, and it's out of the horse's mouth. So the guy who's facilitating the football is big into Greg Dortch. Absolutely. With Kyler Murray, that's what I want to hear. We talk about coach speak all the time, but quarterback speak is very important. If you just listen to that, that matters entirely. And I know with Johnny Tuma, you talked about what different rankings of shower narratives, roommate narratives. There's the chemistry there just from the quarterback narrative.
I'm so glad you saw that video. That was great.
Yes.
It was I was not planning on going on that rant, but it's necessary sometimes to have those conversations about what chemistry looks like, what narratives matter for us for fantasy.
And there goes Andre Yoshivas, speaking of.
The Yoshi himself.
Yep.
So here's the thought. We are getting late into the season, and I was hoping it would, Taysom Hill already goes off. I was going to talk about Taysom Hill. He was literally teed up, and then he goes here on a team that, well, let's pull up the draft board. They went 3 straight tight ends going into pick 18, and they only had David Njoku before. They have 3 quarterbacks. How does Taysom Hill fit with that team's build?
That's very tough to see.
Like, they have 3 legit starting quarterbacks, so Taysom Hill's not going to play. And you've got 4 tight ends who are all starting tight ends. Crud. Theo Johnson went off. He was going to be one of the guys at the turn.
Who are you thinking out here?
I'm thinking we go Penix.
Yep.
And what, like Jatavion Sanders. The pathway for Sanders to be the starting tight end on the Panthers is viable.
Now, it's funny. It may be too late to ask, but are we concerned about too many rookies?
No. I think we can have a lot of confidence in the rookies that we've been picking. So I'm not
especially where we've drafted them too. You know, we haven't forced and reached on any rookies where it's like, hey, they're out of their depth, out of their bounds. We actually have them all in pockets where they could steam up. You could tell a story about Marvin Harrison Jr. You could tell it about Neighbors, Adunze. Just keep on going down. Xavier Legette, XL in round 15 at cost. It's not like we're talking about a 9th round pick.
Nope.
So, yep. You do want to go JT, right? Because we just went
either that or Michael Mayer. Who do you want? Because Mayer is the Vegas.
I kind of think that it could be Mayer over Jatavion Sanders.
Okay.
And in my conviction play, you weren't so in on Isaiah Likely, but I see a trend in the NFL where it's the Ravens, it's the Raiders, it may even be the Packers sometimes, to people's chagrin, where it's 2 tight ends out there. And if Brock Bowers is going to get his carved out slot usage, just varying movement around, why not Michael Mayer? Especially, I think low-key Michael Mayer. And now we go back to Adams, Jacoby. A move for Adams to leave is really going to set this team on fire in a good way.
It unlocks it. It unlocks this whole thing. For what it's worth, Greg Dortch last year was best ball value 203 overall, which sounds bad, but it's not as bad as it sounds.
Right, because we're in a bargain bin. It's the $5 DVD at Walmart section.
Yeah, and he was a part-time player last year. Now he has a pathway to be full-time player.
And he can absolutely cook. And again, the utterances from his own quarterback. Sometimes this game is just simple when we keep it simple.
Yes. So we've got one last pick. Who is on your radar for a final pick in this draft here, Jeremiah?
Well, I would say if we've gone for Penix, Bo Nix, and Allen, any pressure to go for a fourth quarterback?
Well, who's out there?
Because I don't feel concerned. It's just I'm comfortable enough.
And I'm happy with the tight end room too.
Yep. So we're narrowing down to receiver or running back. At this point in the draft, does a receiver really pay off? Of all the positions, wouldn't you say, based on contingency value and opportunity share value, that it's the running back position that will run from here? Granted, Puka Nacua was drafted so late last year, but that's just an aberration year to year. Year over year, really, it is a running back position. So would you want to pick another running back here?
There was one that looks like went off. Let's see. Looking contingency upside, like Justice Hill, we can't ignore. Trey Sermon, we can't ignore. As I'm scrolling through, like those are two guys.
Dylan Laube is out there.
Yeah, we've hit Vegas pretty hard.
I was just gonna say, if you want to go nuts on Vegas,
Clyde Edwards-Helaire is also there, which you hear mixed things. Is it Deneric Prince? Is it this Steele running back?
Carson Steele, yeah.
Yeah, is it Clyde Edwards-Helaire? You know it.
And you said you're out on now. Granted, you may not be in on Miles Sanders, but at the very last pick of the draft, would you be in on Miles Sanders at that price?
No.
Hey, Bradley, if we get some alert that Miles Sanders ends up on the Cowboys, we'll be in the Player Profiler newsroom. I'll be like, hey, look, check this out.
Cordarrelle Patterson is the last pick. Because we're just leaning into the Arthur Smith. What is it? The fallacy of logical rational coaching. I maybe we lean into the fallacy of
illogical
coaching.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
AJ
Sam
Dillon.
Howell, yep.
AJ Dillon.
I don't buy it, but at the same time, you're in round 20. What's the acquisition cost here?
Oh, he goes off anyways. It doesn't.
And then you have to be willing to be wrong. Or sometimes we select these players. Like when we were going through the mental exercise of selecting Russell Wilson, the processes that go into that, you and I are both more bullish on Justin Fields. So you're having to go against range of outcomes.
Right.
And think that way. So we're willing to think that way. So is a player like Cordarrelle Patterson somebody that you're considering here with that thought in mind?
Maybe. Here's one I'm going to throw your way, Jeremiah.
Yep.
Jordan Mims. Is that too galaxy brainy?
Well, sell me. What's the elevator pitch for you?
Okay, here's the elevator pitch for Jordan Mims. We've got less than a round.
Yep.
But that may not be enough time to explain the mess that is the New Orleans Saints backfield. True. Kamara left practice yesterday with a back injury. He's 29 years old. His efficiency hasn't been there for 3 straight seasons. Jamal Williams, we know what he is, and evidently Dennis Allen hates him. Who Dennis Allen hates more than Jamal Williams, though? It's Kendre Miller. And so we're looking at 3 running backs who just have major, major question marks. Jordan Mims has been standing out in practice, and Taysom Hill is still going to be listed as a insert expletive quarterback running routes and, maybe throwing a couple passes. Jordan Mims might be on the radar. Okay.
Hey, we're at this point in the draft. That is such a good differentiation. It's a possibility. Look at who's.
Do you know who
selected.
Jordan Mims player profiler comp is, Coach?
Tell me.
Come on, give one guess. We got enough time.
Is it Miles Sanders?
No, it's Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson.
Hey, and just getting the requisite points that you need, show up and push through. Jeff Wilson could do it, waiver wire galore. So I'm all for it, and we can
You think Jeff
monitor.
Wilson even is the answer for our last round pick?
Well, since we
He gets
went
cut.
Jalen Wright, I would say not to hedge there.
Justice Hill, then.
Yes. Hey, justice delayed is justice denied. And, we can talk about anything we want. If you love something, you let it go. We let Justice Hill let go, and here he is. He's back to us at the very last pick. What do you say?
Yeah, let's go Baltimore, baby. All right, Justice Hill brings us home. All right, let's review the draft board with the people. We started with Josh Allen, stacked him with Dalton Kincaid, Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Devontae Adams, 1, 2, 3 wide receivers in a start 3 wide receiver build. We went Rachaad White and then double tapped running back with Kenneth Walker. Rome Odunze, the Roman Empire was on our mind. We got both Roman Wilson and Rome Odunze. This is the way. Bo Nix was our second quarterback. We waited a while into round 9, but he was there. Jacoby Myers, a great value at wide receiver 53. TJ Hockenson was a luxury pick, but he can also smack near the end of the season. Blake Corum, Enrico Dowdle were stance picks. Jalen Wright, just massive upside if Raheem Mostert or Devon Achane goes down. Leggett, Greg Dortch, Roman Wilson round out our wide receiver room. Penix was a late quarterback luxury pick. Michael Mayer, cheer, old Notre Dame. And then Justice Hill bringing us home, RB 72 overall. Coach, how would you rate this draft?
I would say we weren't afraid we went 7 picks before we got our second quarterback. So I really like what we did there. Our running back room is set up so beautifully because we have our 2 filled out in between Corum and Jalen Wright. It is to the moon. We have such an opportunity, and we have such differentiation with Michael Penix in the quarterback room. That would turn the tide so much in our favor in the event that Kirk Cousins, because you have to build in out of 100%, hey, maybe there's 20%, 30% that Kirk Cousins isn't going to last the entire season. And then Michael Mayer is such a differentiated play to our differentiated play of TJ Hockenson, where you can tell an excellent story that Mayer is a differentiated player. We have a top 5 tight end in Dalton Kincaid, and he's got stat correlation where we're getting the direct benefit with the boom weeks of Josh Allen. That will spike our team up huge. And then we know that TJ Hockenson, we're drafting like we're right, we're correct. But the beauty is we're drafting TJ Hockenson in the 11th round, tight end 14, to have maybe 10 games. That is just, I love it. There's a lot riding on Josh Allen, of course, but he's our first round pick for a reason. And I love our receiver room. We got ahead, and part of that 7 gap sandwich that we built between Allen and Nix really took pressure off our entire draft. Would you say you felt any pressure during this draft?
Not really. We pivoted a lot. Like, we talked about particular players and then we're like, no, actually, let's go with this one. And I think that's a sign that you don't feel cornered or pressured or, feel like you need to make that pick. Instead, there was an ebb and flow and patience and, okay, now that we've dug a little deeper, this is what the board is actually given to us. We made it work, and I'm very happy with both the build and the player takes that we've incorporated in here. Lots of rookies. I don't care. These are the types of players that will be smacking near the end of the season.
Yep.
And that's how you kind of want to build these teams is you've got a couple wily vets.
Yep.
You've got Josh Allen. You've got your Dalton Kincaid, second-year player. You've got Adams and Rachaad White, Kenneth Walker, Jacoby Myers, but a lot of rookies too. So,
well, if you cut the draft in half at the 10th pick 20 rounds here. Beyond Jacoby Myers is just going to fill in so much for us and give time for those players like Corum, Leggett, Roman Wilson, Jalen Wright to fill up and onboard throughout the season.
You love it. You love to see it. All right. Well, this has been great drafting on the deep end. Thank you again to Adam and to Mike for the invite drafting on the FFPC and the Deep End Invitational RotoViz format, TriFLEX. Coach Retzlaff, Jeremiah Retzlaff at Coach Retzlaff 1 on the X Machine. Tell the people where they can find your work and what you've been doing for Player Profiler.
Yep, you can find me at the Player Profiler news desk. Myself and Mike Lindberg, we have the Player Profiler News primetime show. Say that so many times in a row. And that's usually on Monday nights, sometimes Tuesday. In season, it will be Monday nights. I'm also at Destination Debbie with Bestball Night School. And then Bradley, your FF Plus network, I have Bestball Study Hall. So there's just talent abounds between the news desk and the team that you've built, Bradley, over at the FF Plus network. So it's a pleasure to come on and be a part of this audience. I know I'm filling in a chair where this week, Dan Williamson, hat tip to him. It's an honor to be able to be called upon as a guest here on Stack Hunter. So thank you very much, Bradley.
Well, make sure everyone's checking out the draft kit. We're going to run the ad and then we'll close it up. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We appreciate y'all. Until next time, good luck in the best ball streets, everybody.
Hey, it's the Podfather. I have great news. The draft kit is live. It is world famous. Why? Because it is the best resource for winning fantasy football championships that exists. There are rankings and cheat sheets for every format you can imagine. We have projections both at the team level and the player level. And wherever you are, you can click on a player, open them up, and see in-depth written analysis about what to expect in fantasy football from that player this year. And then you can click on the team, and you can get even more in-depth analysis, all the drivers of fantasy production, both in a positive and negative direction for that team, including a signature trend. And the graphics are incredible. So these team insights, they give you the team-level projections, the vacated targets, the vacated ARs. And we added a bunch of features. Individual cheat sheets for Theo and Billy and Dario. So you could take your favorite analyst and download their personal draft cheat sheet. And then in the commissioners section, Memphis Young lays out everything you need to know to manage a league, the best minds in the industry contributing analysis. It's certainly not the most inexpensive draft kit on the market, but it is the best. Playerprofiler.com/draft kit, playerprofiler.com/draft kit. Go get it.